Welcome to War Priest, where you get practical Orthodox Christian experiences, specifically for warriors.
War Priest commence.
Welcome to War Priest, Father George Hill, here with Alex Brasco. This is our 4th episode. Absolutely. Pleasure to have you aboard with us, as always. Thanks for joining us here. Alex has a couple administrative things he needs to get to. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Alex.
Hello, Father. Thank you. Yes, I do have some admin things I need to put out. First of all, need everyone to know that we are on Spotify and we are also on Apple Podcasts. So for those of you who prefer that platform or those platforms, please check us out, War Priest on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're going to be featured on Buck Johnson here in the near future. I am wearing my Counterflow Buck Johnson t-shirt, which somehow is the most comfortable t-shirt I've ever worn in my life, Father. I don't know why it is. But
it's too, man.
It's pretty badass.
Yeah. That's right. Flex those lats too when you're turning around.
So, well, shout out to Buck.
Right on.
Okay. Oh, and we are joint. Remember, Father, we're joint. So I'm wearing my Navy hat. It's
Navy hat.
It's the
LCS
22 USS Kansas City. It's a littoral combat ship.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm a plank owner. I was a part of the commissioning committee in Kansas City. And so, giving some respect to the Navy.
I dig it.
Something I do want to say is thefaithfulcenturion.org will become a reality here very soon. These podcasts will be featured on our website, which is providing support, resources, training, you name it, to Orthodox Christian service members that are geographically isolated around the world without a chaplain, alone and unafraid. So that website should be up and running in the very near future. Today, Father, we're going to talk about a lot of things, a lot of topics that I know people have questions about. We want to make sure we talk about the chaplaincy, what it is to be a chaplain, and why people should become chaplains. Why do we need chaplains? And do we need Orthodox chaplains? So hopefully we're going to discuss those things. We're going to talk a little bit about online influencers, Orthodox influencers, some of the issues that may come out of that. And then something called Economia. Economia, you're going to explain that to us a little bit today. Important concept for us to understand. So let's start out, Father. Can you tell us your story? Why did you become Orthodox? Why did you become a chaplain?
Sure. So, let's see. 1990, graduated from the Citadel. I got commissioned, wound up practicing law for a little bit, as I explained in the first episode. But there was a time right before September 11th, right before 9/11 happened. And we were in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I was attending a Greek Orthodox parish there. I was on the parish council. I was practicing law at the DA's office in Chattanooga. I was putting criminals away. And I was an armor officer in the Tennessee Army National Guard, Apache troop, 1st Squadron 278th ACR. If anybody's out there from the good old 278th. So that's basically where I was pre-9/11. I had plans to stay in the Guard and retire from the Guard, and I was going to run for judge, I think in 2006. That was the plan. And we attended, but you want me to back up. You want me to talk about how I became Orthodox and how I became
Yeah,
a chaplain.
specifically, why'd you start attending that church? That's right.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, let's back on up then. We're going to back up to 1993 when I was in law school at Regent University. And Regent University was probably a microcosm of the evangelical Protestant experience here in America. It was Pat Robertson's university. He'd run for president. These folks are showing up there to, get their law degree, practice law, run for office, bring America back to God, right? That whole thing. And
Yep.
my parents were all about that. And I was all about that at the time. I just left the Coast Guard, didn't have anything to do, couldn't figure out what to do in my life. So they talked me into going to law school, and that's how I wound up there. But while I was there, before law school, and definitely before being in a Christian law school among educated young Christians, I'd been to Sunday school probably 9 months before I was born. And I was about the smartest guy around when it came to scripture, but I was your typical Johnny Protestant that knew his Bible pretty well from going to Sunday school and being in church 3 times a week my whole life. And I ran into some questions. I ran into a lot of different flavors of the Protestant experience in America there. And I was newly married, and I believed, as I still do, one thing that Protestant Christianity taught me is that the husband is the head of the home, and being an officer too, I kind of define that as the Lord's going to hold me accountable for all that happens or fails to happen in this formation, which is my family, right? So I was raised Baptist. Dad was a Frugal Baptist pastor. Later went into Christian business and publishing and that sort of a thing, and I had some real questions when I got there and started listening to all these differing Protestant opinions. Everybody agreed on politics there because they're all conservative Christians, but they debated theology over and over again. And I got to a point where I wasn't sure why I was Baptist. And I also got the conviction that, well, being the spiritual leader of this home, I need to be leading my family in the right direction. And if the Lord called me home today and said, Russ, why are you Baptist? I'd have to say, well, Lord, my dad's around here somewhere. You'll have to ask him. That's why I'm Baptist, essentially. So I decided that wasn't a good enough answer. I basically did a deep dive into church history. I thought, well, I'll start from the scratch, from the early church, make my way through all these schisms, figure out where I wind up. I got to 1054 with the Great Schism between East and West, and I wound up on the Orthodox side. And that made the historical journey very short because I didn't have to go through all these Protestant splits. I think the tune of 3,000. Some people say 30,000. I'm not sure which is which since the Protestant Reformation. But I didn't even go through all that. And historically, I was led to the church intellectually, and then theologically, I started diving into these things. And what really hit the nail on the head for me, I became to believe and be very convicted that the Eucharist, communion, was the actual body and blood of Christ. Specifically after reading John chapter 6 from about verse 45 or 50 on. This is the actual body and blood of Christ. Who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. If you not eat and drink the flesh and blood of the Son of Man, you have no life in you. And many of his disciples walked no more with him. So I was determined I was not going to be one of those that walked no more with him, even though I was raised in a faith group that did not believe that the Eucharist is just an ordinance, right? You're just following an ordinance.
Yeah.
That there was no salvation to it, and it certainly wasn't the body and blood of Christ. It was just a representation and a trip down memory lane, basically. So I reached that point, and it was about a week later. I was at First Baptist Church in Norfolk, Virginia. Dr. Bob Record was the pastor, and lo and behold, they were serving communion. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to be Orthodox. I can just take communion when they take it, once a quarter in the Baptist church. I'll just take it as the actual body and blood of Christ, and problem solved, right? So I show up there. I'm actually excited. I'm like, wow, they're going to do communion today. on a Sunday morning, which never happens in the Protestant church. The ones that aren't charismatic, right? So anyway, I remember very distinctly, I was super excited, man, this is going to be great. This is kind of like a new faith for me, right? Taking communion like this. So Dr. Record held the cup up in his hands and he said, "Then our Lord said, 'This is a symbol of my blood.'" And that was kind of it, bro. You know, my wife says I made a scene. If I did, I didn't really mean to, but I didn't take it. I put it down in the little communion cup holder, got up, walked out.
Wow.
And I said, I tell you what, I don't know where I'm going next Sunday, but I'm going to go somewhere that believes it's not going to misquote scripture.
Did that pastor, did you confront the pastor about misquoting
You can't
scripture?
talk to that guy. He had like 10,000 members in that church or something. It's another thing. You never talk to a Baptist pastor. You can talk to the associate guy. I remember talking to my Sunday school teacher. I was like, "Hey, what do we believe about the essence of the Eucharist?" And he says, "Well, we believe it's a symbol." I was like, "Well, the scripture says it's the actual thing, and even Martin Luther said this was the actual body and blood of Christ. It was a mystery."
That's
He's
right.
like, "Well, we don't necessarily believe everything Martin Luther said." And I was like, "Well, is there anybody, anywhere, anything that we believe what they say?" And the answer obviously was no. One of the tenets of being a Baptist is an understanding and a belief in the absolute autonomy of the individual believer when it comes to the interpretation of theology. So, yeah, anybody can believe anything they want, anytime they want. And I was just quite frankly sick of that. So didn't know where to go next. Didn't know what churches were out there that believed it was the body and blood of Christ, but I knew that Orthodox church down the road did. So that's where we were the next week. And I walked in there and it was like walking into a foreign country for me. But I studied and I'd read about everything that they were doing and I kind of understood, but it just looked so foreign. I was like, this is going to take a lot of getting used to. Well, 30 years later, I walk into a Baptist church and I feel the same kind of way now. But that's how I came to Orthodoxy right there.
Was that church that you went to, that first Orthodox church, was it Greek in Norfolk?
It was an OCA church.
OCA church.
Theodore Panchak was the rector, and they had this great. Father Theodore died a few years ago as OCA priest. They also had Mark Kozak, who was a Navy chaplain, hanging out there, and they had Paul Perch, who was, I think he retired out of there as a commander, a Navy commander. But those three priests taught me Orthodoxy, and they were all students. All three of them were students of Alexander Schmemann, which got me turned on to Alexander Schmemann. And I actually went to St. Tikhon instead of St. Vlad's. But Alexander Schmemann is from St. Vlad's. He was the dean over there for years and years. Yep. And there was this rift between the parish school, Alexander Schmemann, John Meyendorff and company, and then and the Greeks. We had a Greek patristics professor, and the Old Russian. St. Tikhon was Old Russian, and there was a rift between these folks, and they just down talked Alexander Schmemann all the time. But Schmemann wound up being buried at St. Tikhon, so I guess he got the last laugh. But anyway, that was my story of coming to Orthodoxy. Regarding coming into the Army as a chaplain, that's a little more interesting.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, it's right. But it's weeks before 9/11. I just finished an annual training as about half the annual training. I was scout platoon leader. In the second half, I got moved over to the Troop XO. And as such, I got put in charge of the wash rack for the whole squadron at the end of training. And I was up in the tower directing them with the radio, and there's like a mile of vehicles out there all waiting to get washed and waiting to get PMCS'd and turned in. In the middle of all that, the battalion commander or the squadron commander comes up, pats me on the back. "Hey, Lieutenant, you're doing a great job up here running this whole thing, organizing all this. How many years you've been a platoon leader now?" And I was like, 3. Yeah, I was like, 3 years, sir. He's like, yeah, your troop time's over. I want you working up for me as the HHTXO. And when he said that, my heart sank. I did not want to go be an HHTXO.
Right.
So right about then, I went ahead and dropped my packet to go to 20th Special Forces Group and go to the Q course. I was like, I'm going to keep my troop time. I've graduated number one in every school I've ever been to in the Army. I'll graduate number one from the Q course as well. Well, airborne school, the airborne school came next, but my transfer was successful over to 20th Special Forces Group, and I'm in the Q course line. I went to airborne school, then I went to the Q course, or I went to SFAS, and I was doing really well for the first week and a half. I was tearing everything up, and we started the STAR course. And if you're familiar with Camp McCall, anybody that's been down that road can tell you all about the STAR course. Very, very gigantic land nav through some really nasty terrain out at Camp McCall, North Carolina. And I was doing really well and walked a point. When I got done with about an 18K movement, I couldn't stand on my right knee anymore. It was just done. And I remember laying on my back in the middle of the night with my foot up on my ruck. And out of desperation, I just said, why, God? Why? I've been successful at everything I've ever done in the Army. What's going on here? And this has really only happened to me once or twice in my entire life. But in that moment, the Lord did speak to me. And he said, you're not going to be a Green Beret. You're going to be an Orthodox priest and an Army chaplain. Wow. And you got even more specific than that. You're going to do this in the 82nd Airborne. Well, the whole thing sounded ridiculous to me, and I chalked it up to not having eaten or slept in the last 3 or 4 days and my right knee throbbing. So I was like, That's just the dumbest damn thing I've ever thought of in my life. Immediately like that, the message came, you can think about it, whatever you want to think about it. It's just what's going to happen. So the idea of that happening was utterly insane. Logistically, furthermore, I mean, look at me. I'm not exactly what you would call priestly material. And I explained that to the Lord. I'm like, hey, I can't act. I can't act like that.
Hey, Father, what are you talking about?
Bishop says, like, I can't act like those guys act. They're all holy and they don't chew Copenhagen and spit. And I'm a freaking killer. Not only am I a killer, I put criminals in jail. So I'm doubly not canonical to do this. So I kind of gaffed that off. And I remember saying, I can't pull that off. And I remember the Lord saying, nope, I want you to be exactly like you are. You are going to reach a certain sector of people that is not being reached right now. I'm like, okay, whatever. And the following Sunday, after that was a few Sundays later, I went to church and they had since this Greek parish they'd run their priest off. And this was in Chattanooga. There was an old man named Father Nicholas, and he was driving all the way from Nashville to do liturgies for us every single Sunday. And I've always been the kind of guy, I like to talk to the priest. I just don't want to be the priest, So I'm talking to this guy during coffee hour and asking him questions. And he says, I'm getting awful tired of driving down here. I can't do this forever. I was like, yeah, I imagine you can't. He said, well, this place needs a permanent priest, Russ. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, they do. They need a permanent priest. He's like, you're not picking up what I'm laying down, son. I was like, what? And he says, someone like you should go to late vocations and be a priest. And of course, I explained to him that was an impossibility. Didn't mention the revelation I'd had a few weeks before. And driving home, I told my wife that, and I was like, can you imagine me as a priest? Can you imagine us as a priest family? We laughed and laughed the whole way home. And I remember saying, the world as we know it would have to change for me to be a priest. Completely change. Right?
How's that? What do you mean? The world would have to change?
Well, I'm an assistant district attorney. I prosecute people for a living. And if I'm not going to continue doing that, I'm going to go be a judge. And I actually like being a killer. I like being a combat leader, right? Makes me uncanonical to be a priest. I don't qualify, right? So that's why I said the world as we know it would have to change, and I mean dramatically, right? That was September 9th, 2001, right? What happened 2 days later?
Oh yeah, 9/11.
Yeah, the world changed, and it set in line a series of events that I had no control over that left me with one possibility. And let me explain. Few weeks after 9/11 happened, I'm in 20 Special Forces Group now. Actually, maybe a few months. It was relatively quick. We got the notice that we were going to mobilize and deploy. So I told my boss that, and immediately he didn't like it. This was the district attorney. His name was Bill Cox, Chattanooga, Tennessee, 2001, right? Yep. And he did not want to hear that. But he didn't really say anything back. But a few weeks later, he calls me into his office and he wants me to resign.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, well, sir, you and I are both attorneys and we both hopefully understand the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. But the problem with USERRA at the time is it had no real teeth to it. So he was telling me that I needed to go, but he came up with some other reasons, but everybody knew he didn't. He was because he said in the middle of the conversation, what am I going to do about General Sessions Court for a whole year? I was like, I don't know, sir. I'm going to be fighting for my country. You got a first world problem there. He didn't like that answer. And I knew under USERRA that I only had tenure in that job for 365 days. That was it. In 1 year, he could get rid of me. And then what am I going to do? I got a wife. I got 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do then? So I know this job is over with. So that deployment did cost me my job under those circumstances. So now what am I going to do? So I started looking for other jobs. Of course, no one's going to hire me. I'm about to deploy. But I had left active duty before and walked right into being a civilian the next day with no paycheck, no benefits, no nothing. So I knew what that was going to be like. So I started shopping around and just dead ends everywhere. And this was the 3rd hit now. I go back to Fort Bragg for civil affairs training, and I run into Father Eugene Lehue. I remember I got there, parked my car. I got little visiting officers' quarters I was staying at. Put on my running shoes, decided to go for a run down Ardennes. And I ran by Wood Memorial Chapel on Ardennes Street. It was battalion engineer land then. Mm-hmm. I ran by there, and on the marquee, it says Orthodox Divine Liturgy, 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning. I was like, how about that? There's an Orthodox chaplain here. How could I be so lucky, right? So I went to liturgy, met Father Eugene, went to confession with Father Eugene, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, right? We're going to talk about fear later on, right? Remind me of talk about Father Eugene. But here was an Orthodox priest in the 82nd Airborne jumping out of airplanes, and I was like, this is the revelation that God gave me. I was supposed to be doing this, and here's a guy actually doing it. Father Eugene was in the middle of getting out of the Army and going into the Air Force. I was like, yeah, we need Army chaplains. Well, then events keep rolling. I wind up mobilized in Afghanistan. It was 2002, 2003, that deployment. No Orthodox priest where I was. One guy came and visited us, and he was in the Air Force, visited us for like a couple of days, and he was gone. But in the middle of all this, my wife passes the NCLEX for her nursing degree.
Okay.
And I had applied to St. Tikhon's. I was rear deck commander at first. When I got there, I had already applied to St. Tikhon's and been accepted. But now, logistically, how in the heck are we even going to get up there? This is impossible. And I'm not going to live as poor as a church mouse like I did in law school. Not going to do that to my family. So my wife applies to Honesdale Community Hospital, or Honesdale Memorial Hospital, which is 5 miles away from St. Tikhon's. And they accept her, and they agree to pay all our moving expenses up there if she will sign a contract for 3 years, which is exactly how long seminary was. So things are starting to point in a certain direction that are out of my control. And so I finished up that deployment, resigned from the DA's office, and went to seminary. And 3 years later, I was a chaplain in 2508 in the 82nd Airborne. You know, they first tried to put me at Fort Stewart, and I was completely happy with that. I was happy with just having a job. Last minute, the orders got to, I was like, well, I guess that part of the prophecy didn't come out. But they jerked those orders about a month before I reported, and I went to Fort Bragg to the 82nd.
Okay. So, Father, I got a question. If someone's considering the priesthood, maybe a seminarian listening to this podcast, or a soldier thinking about becoming a chaplain, why should they really consider becoming a chaplain?
Well, that's a softball, Alex. I mean, there's not very many chaplains running around. I think there were 7 in the Army when I left. And that's about it. Yeah. There's very
What do
few.
they get? What do they get from being a chaplain that they won't get from just being a parish priest? What's the difference?
Oh, well, financially, it's going to be a lot better. They're going to work a lot harder, I think. They're going to be stuck going on deployments and things of that nature.
Okay, Father. So we talked about your experience becoming Orthodox. We talked about you becoming an Orthodox priest. Briefly spoke about why someone should become an Orthodox priest. Fact of the matter is, or chaplain, fact of the matter is, when you become a chaplain, there's a very real possibility you're going to go to war.
Yeah, you're going to deploy. You're going to spend time away from your family. You're going to be busy. Lots of counseling, tons of counseling. We have to remember that the life happens to these young folks in the military about 200 mile an hour faster than it happens to regular civilians. So, a lot of baptisms, a lot of memorial services, a lot of death, divorces, combat, all that. Put that together. It's just a very fast-paced, in-your-face ministry.
Yeah.
Now,
So
it's
how does that affect your family?
I mean, it's going to affect them similar as it would no matter what you're doing in the military. It's going to be the same kind of a thing with frequent moves, frequent deployments. You're not going to get that in the civilian sector being a parish priest. You're also not going to get the paycheck. The military is going to pay you for that. Your family is going to be taken care of with SGLI, Service Group Life Insurance. We've had babies in the military, never paid a dime for their prescriptions or baby births or anything of that nature. So you are taken care of, and the pension plan, disability is all very good as well, that you just don't get that in the civilian priesthood. But not everybody can pull off being an Army chaplain or a military chaplain, for that matter. Not every seminarian, my goodness. There's only a select few that could actually pull this off, I'm afraid.
So I have a question, and it has to do with really, I guess, the attitude or the approach. As a soldier, 1, as an Orthodox priest, 2, can you talk a little bit about facing fear? Can you talk a little bit about what it's like when you know you're going to deploy, when your unit is getting the word that they're going to be going down range? Can you talk about what that experience is like? and how you prepare personally, but then also how you prepare as a priest?
So, yeah, lots of opportunities to be terrified. And it depends on what kind of unit you're in, what you're doing. But when you go to combat, everybody goes. But if you're a combat arms dude, yeah, you're going to be in the thick of it. If you're at the supply depot, maybe not so much. But everybody in 2508 was going to the thick of it, even our mechanics. Not only that, we're jumping out of airplanes and doing things like that. I'll tell you a brief story. I always wanted to go to airborne school when I was at the Citadel, and I finally got the opportunity. Went out the bird that first time. The exit was a lot more violent than I had planned for, and I'd tell folks it's kind of like driving your car 130 mile an hour down the interstate and flicking a cigarette butt out the window, and you're the cigarette butt. So I was not prepared for that violent exit, and I was not prepared to hit the ground as hard as I did in that T-10 Delta. We used to call it the crash 10. I hit the ground on Friar DZ in Fort Benning, Georgia. About knocked the wind out of me, checked all my pieces and parts, everything was there. And I immediately realized that jumping was not for me, that only crazy people did this. I didn't want anything to do with the soft community anymore. Maybe they would let me back into the armor land, or I'm firmly on the ground. But this was utterly absurd. And I knew only one thing for sure, and that was that I was never going to do that again. And the only thing I had to do, Alex, was figure out an honorable way to quit. And I was pretty sure I could do that because I'm a creative thinker. So I went to thinking on it and thought about it for a long time, thought about it all through the night. And I decided the best thing I could do was go talk to the first sergeant. I was a lieutenant, and the first sergeant had come out of the 82nd Airborne, and he seemed to be very professional. The other black hats, they were just assholes. I wasn't going to talk to any of them. So I had a plan. I was going to go talk to the first sergeant first thing in the morning, and at formation. So I show up to formation that morning. We're all getting ready to jump again, jump number 2, and that first sergeant's not there. And I'm the chalk leader as a first lieutenant. I've got about 80 Joes, and the first sergeant's not there. So we take off down to the pack shed. About what, I don't know, what is a 1.5 2-mile run down there? Big long formation. You went to jump school, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you remember? Yeah, we all did. Going down the hill, down to the pack shed.
I actually jumped with the 313th MI Battalion. It was a GSR radar unit with the 82nd.
Right on. So
I did my CTLT time with the 82nd Airborne with the 313th.
Oh, good. So you are not a 5-jump chump.
I'm not a 5-jump chump. I jumped a little bit with the Germans in Germany out of their C-130 equivalent, and out of a Huey, believe it or not, and out of a
right on.
CH-53. So I've had a couple jumps more than a 5-jump jump.
Well, you know what it's kind of like then.
Oh yeah.
But get down to the pack shed. First sergeant's still not there until I figure out he's not here, and I'm not jumping. I already decided I'm not jumping. I decided I'm not jumping even when I was putting my kit on, putting on my parachute, getting rigged up, got JMPI'd. I'm not jumping. I don't know why I'm putting this on, but I mean,
if you had a better landing, would you not have had such a problem with it, or was it the exit? What was it?
It was the whole thing together was ultimately terrifying. To this day, 55 jumps later, jump master, senior rated parachute, scariest thing I've ever done in my life. So I'll tell you about my last 2 jumps here in Hawaii in a minute. But yeah, exactly. So I'm calm in the moment, right? And this E6 black hat walks up to me, and I'm at the end of the harness, of those little chairs, that little bench things that they got for you that hold your chute up on the back, right?
Yep.
So we're all sitting there. I got about 80 Joes behind me. To the right of me. This E6 comes up to me, stands up in front of me, and just looks at me with a big grin on his face. And I look up and I'm like, what? What do you want, Sergeant? And he was like, "You're scared shitless, aren't you, sir? I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your white knuckles right there." And so I just kind of looked at him, a little pissed off. And he said, "But let me tell you what you need to be scared of. Take a look down to your right. You see that 7th Joe down there on your right?" So I'm kind of looking at him. And he's looking at this real goofy looking private with big birth control glasses on, right? And he says, "Yeah, the dude with the BCGs, that guy right there. He's been sleeping in every class we've given. He's going to sky shark you, sir.
Ooh.
He's coming at you. You're going to get tangled up with him and you're going to scream down to Friar DZ.
That's horrible.
Yeah, try to do a dynamic PLF, sir," and then turns around and walks away. All right, Alex, at this point, I'm utterly pissed. I'm like, okay, that is it. Pardon my language, but airborne school. I'm done. Over with. It's over with. So I look over and I see the NCOIC was this E7 Puerto Rican dude, and the dude was a flaming asshole, I remember. And I was like, well, I'm just going to have to talk to him. He's the senior ranking person here. I guess that's just what I got to do. So he's walking towards our chalk. So I stand up and I take about 5 or 6 steps towards him. Then I turned over and looked at all my Joes. And they're all looking at me going, "Hooah, sir, hooah." And I looked back at him. I was like, "Yeah, hooah." And I turned around and sat back down. 55 jumps later, it never got easier. I remember the last 2 jumps I did here in Hawaii with sock pack. I don't know if you remember your 5 airborne points of performance, right? Proper body exit, or proper body position exit. Check canopy, gain canopy control. Yep. 3rd point of performance. Keep sharp lookout for other jumpers. 4th, prepare to land. 5th, land, right? Well, I had 6 my last 2 jumps. After check canopy and gain canopy control, insert dry heave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're nervous.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, we're flying. The winds are blowing up here. Trade winds are blowing, 10 to 20 knots at any given time. And the standard is 13 knots, right? Little postage stamp DZ with barbed wire running all through it. These big gulches and pineapple fields all around, too. So, and most of them were UH-60 jumps. And, boom, out I go. Get all undiscombobulated. Check canopy, gain canopy control. Dry heave 1 good time. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm good to go now. Right. So, always scared of jumping. You want to talk about fear. I'm more scared of jumping than getting shot at, to be honest with you. That was no big deal.
Yeah.
So, I go into confession to Father Eugene Lehue. Now, this had bothered me so much. I had talked to several different Orthodox priests. Hey, what can I do about this fear? I can feel it. It's like that fear I had in 3rd grade when I got to leave school and walk to the bus and the bullies in there. The bullies in between me and the bus. I got this fear when I'm in 3rd grade, and here I am in my 30s, and I'm like, when do I get to be old enough to where I don't have to feel this fear sitting right here in my chest? Right?
Mm-hmm.
When do I get to do that? That must be a privilege. Other people don't have this, So I described this to all these folks, to these priests, and they're like, "Oh my, that's terrible. Oh wow, that sounds really awful." I'm like, "Wow, thanks, Father. That was pretty worthless." So I go to Eugene Lehue. Father Eugene, he just retired from the Air Force 06. We're in there at Wood Chapel. And I'm telling this. And he's got 80 jumps, I think, because he was a prior enlisted in the Air Force. He's talking about walking on people's canopies, that sort of a thing in the middle of the air. And so I revealed this fear to him. And it was during confession. And I remember telling him this, and he's standing there next to me, looking at me like this. He's like looking at me like that, like I got, pigtails growing out of my ears or something, right? And I was like, what do I do about this fear, Father? And he says, you need to stop being a pussy.
It's an Orthodox chaplain telling you that.
Yep. Best advice I ever got from anybody. Best advice. You know what?
Cool.
You got that fear inside of you. Suck that shit up, man.
That's gold.
Embrace it. Own it. Right? I've had that many times. And I think airborne school is an excellent thing that will teach you that, especially if you're terrified. Because you know what you do when you're terrified? You play little tricks on yourself. I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm just on an airplane ride. I'm not jumping, right? Stand up, hook up, right? I'll stand up. I'm hooking up. I'm not jumping, right? And then green light, go. I don't care about the green light. I ain't jumping. I'm just walking towards the door. That's all I'm doing, right?
Right.
I just keep telling myself I'm not doing it till I get up the door. Then I make myself go.
So
then I'm only scared
works
for a half a second.
Denial works up to the very end.
Yeah. It works. So, yep, I did that. I thought being a jump master would make me a little bit less scared, and that's true. I mean, I was too busy to be scared before most of those jumps. Right. But what you really learn how to do in airborne school is be utterly terrified and just left, right, and do it anyway. So, young hero out there, when you're scared, I got it. I feel it. I know it. Be scared. And then just left, right, and go do what you got to do. Left, right, pull that trigger.
I guess that's one of the reasons why training, realistic training and tense training is so important. And that's why in the military, we do it over and over and over. I
remember that training in Afghanistan. It must have been March 8th, 2008. We were in Paktika province, rolling across the desert. And 2 trucks up in front of me blew up, IED. We made a 360, and there were landmines all over that place. And when we had a WIA and a KIA down there, Sergeant Gabriel Guzman from California was killed March 8th, 2008, 2508, Charlie Company. And so I get out of the vehicle, and when I do, because they're like, Chaplain, we need you, right? About 100 meters I got to go to get to that vehicle, and we've already made a 360 perimeter around the blast site. And we got WIA and KIA down there. Chaplain, we need you. So I get out of the Humvee, and the platoon sergeant says, sir, be careful where you step. There's landmines all over this area. Well, at that point, I didn't want to go see that soldier anymore, did I? So I just did the left, right thing. I just left, right to the jump door. And I remember praying this prayer in my head. I just made it up out of nowhere, out of Psalm 93. His angels shall bear you up in their wings, lest you dash your foot against a stone, right? Or maybe it's Psalm 139. So I would just say over and over again, his angels will bear you up in their wings, lest you dash your foot against an anti-personnel mine. Yep. That's what I did. Got all the way down there.
That's an awesome prayer.
Yep. Another incident that happened. You got to figure out what your greatest fear is, I guess. I was a major Siege Assotif chaplain, Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force Afghanistan, 2013, sometime in March. We were at Belumbai. I was down there visiting one of my battalion chaplains from 7th Group. I think it was 1-7 that was down there. And anyway, we get in a big, huge war movie out of nowhere right there at the fob. They were shooting PKM rounds from 2 different directions. So every time you got behind something over here, well, the rounds are coming this way. Go get behind something, they're coming from the other way. Anyway, our CA medic got shot right through his right arm, right between the ulna and the radius, right, clean shot right through the forearm, right? And he was probably about, 30 or 40 feet away from me when that happened. I heard a loud crack. And I was hearing small pops, but heard that loud crack. And it was super close. And he took one right through the arm as he was running, I guess. So we go back there. I stick him with the IV. The 18 Delta was looking for something. Hey, chaps, can you stick him with the IV? I'm like, sure. I stuck his IV. And then this kid wanted communion. He's a Roman Catholic kid. Right? So you talk about, this pulls us into another conversation. So this kid's crying with big crocodile tears as I'm sticking his IV. Chaplain, I could really use that communion now. The reason he said that was because I went to the team meeting at 8:00 that morning, off them all communion. They didn't want it. So I'm like, okay. So I took my communion kit and hung it up on a tree limb by a picnic table right outside of the talk, which was about 200 meters from the aid station where I stuck this kid's IV in. And at this point, Alex, this was like, I'm putting my earplugs in. There was so much stuff going off, and there was so much lead flying around that place. Rocks are skipping up off the ground. Lead rounds, PKM rounds are slamming into the side of our Connex. Made a little hole. One of them actually made it, but they were shooting from a long ways away, so I think the rounds had lost some speed as they were coming to us. But, Chaplain, can I get that communion now? My first reply is, hell no, I ain't running through that flying lead out there to get you communion. I offered that to you this morning, and you said no. I was getting ready to say that, right? Then all of a sudden, I hear the Lord saying, Father George, you got one job, hero, and that's to feed my sheep. And at the most basic standard of feeding my sheep is stick a spoon in their mouth with my Eucharist on it. That's your one job. Now, why don't you want to go feed my lamb my Eucharist? So I'm thinking, I don't want to get shot in the head.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be a good excuse. So off I went. I went running to that picnic table, grabbed that communion kit, went back and gave that kid communion. His name was Sergeant Jimenez. I don't know where he is now, but yep, he wanted communion. I went there and got it for him because the bottom line is, yeah, that's my job. I got one job.
He make
and
it
that's
out.
it.
Okay.
And so
did he make it out?
So that's what I did. Once again, it was I was more afraid of judgment, I guess. Refusing to feed the Lord's sheep. Because what? Because I'm scared. When I was in the Tennessee Guard, we used to put stickers on our helmets, freaking armored crew helmet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them back in the day, these stickers were popular. You'd see them on the back of 4-wheel drive trucks in Tennessee. Ain't scared, it said, right? Have you seen those before? You remember that? Ain't scared, SKEERED, right? We had that sticker on our helmet. It's another thing. You can be fearful, don't be scared, right? Don't be scared. Go do what you got to do. Embrace that fear and just left, right, and go do it. And you'll appreciate, you know what? If you don't do that, you're going to suffer a moral injury, which I talked about in the second episode. You're going to feel, you're going to have a hard time recovering, especially if someone's in dire need of your help and you refuse to do it. You might not ever recover. But they say a hero dies once, but a coward dies 1,000 deaths, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Father, thanks for sharing that. I really hope potential chaplain candidates or Orthodox chaplain priests that are thinking about becoming, or Orthodox priests thinking about becoming chaplains can listen to that. I think that would be worth them really hearing that story. I have a question about your authority as a chaplain. So you mentioned something about comforting the afflicted, and the authority that you have. By what authority are you doing what you're doing on the battlefield?
So I'm following the direct orders of my bishop. Every priest out there has a bishop or is not a priest. So I carry the bishop's antimon, which is signed by him. So I'm acting on behalf of my bishop.
Can you explain what the antimon is for new?
The antimon is a piece of silk cloth. They vary in sizes, and it goes on the altar, and that is basically the priest's license, if you will, to serve the divine liturgy. That is the priest's. That's the bishop's calling card that you have in your pocket. That every priest out there has an antimon, an antimencia. It's got the bishop's signature on it, and it usually the ones that we use in the military that travel around quite a bit, because we serve liturgy all over the place, has a relic of a saint sewed into it. Because most consecrated altars will have a relic of a saint in the altar. So for military chaplains, they'll sew that relic of that saint into that antimon, and you've got a traveling altar that folds up in a plastic bag, Ziploc bag, and goes in your cargo pocket. So that's the authority that I have.
Is that yours personally to keep for good?
It goes back to the church when I'm done.
Okay.
So either when I die or get laicized, one or the other. So
you answer to the bishop. That's your authority. Yes. You also have your military chain of command, right?
Yes.
Do the two ever conflict or not?
Potentially, and yes, they have before. So you also have an endorsement from that bishop that allows you to serve in the military. So even though I'm on active duty in the Army, or I was serving at the pleasure of my bishop, right? And every chaplain out there has an ecclesiastical endorsement, and he serves at that pleasure. It's kind of like your license. Army attorneys, they all have licenses from some state somewhere, and they answer professionally to a state bar. Medical doctors in the Army, yep, same thing. Or throughout the DOD. They've got an endorsement or a license, right? So in lieu of a license, the chaplain corps calls it an endorsement. So I'm endorsed by the Orthodox Church in America.
Okay. And can you talk about Economia? In one of your previous podcasts, Father, you were talking about recommending to soldiers who were alone, going to a service with outside maybe an Orthodox parish because there's none available, and it generated some pushback from people like, you should never recommend that. And you are, as a chaplain, in a position of authority with your bishop's backing to do certain things that are not the norm in, say, a regular parish church. Is that correct?
I think that that pushback that we got, the feedback that we got, was in reference to a comment I made in the first episode where we were talking about what if you're alone in combat, should you go attend another service or fellowship with other Christians, that sort of thing, right? So, yeah, we've got a pretty understood standard in Orthodox Christianity that if you're an Orthodox Christian, you don't go worship with heterodox churches.
Right.
And that's true. And I think this person that sent this comment talked about, I think they live in Missouri or something, maybe. I'm not sure. But they don't live, or wherever they happen to live. they've got a local Orthodox parish, and had a family member that was Baptist or whatever. So they don't go to the Baptist church and worship. They go to the Orthodox parish. Well, of course. Absolutely. No. If you were an Orthodox Christian, you really got no business doing that here in the United States or in Europe or in Western civilization. But when you are in combat, things are different. So I will tell you that there's two individual stories from this, but I'll tell you the first one. Metropolitan Herman was the primate of the Orthodox Church in America then, Metropolitan Herman of blessed memory. He also was the bishop that ordained me, and he was my bishop at the time. And he told me that I will give communion to anyone on the battlefield who would say the prayer, pre-communion prayer of St. Chrysostom, right? I believe, O Lord, and I confess thou art truly Christ, and believe in God. That one, right? Anybody that would profess that this is truly thy most precious blood and this is truly thy precious body, anyone that would confess that and say that prayer, give them communion.
Whether they were Orthodox or not?
Orthodox, Baptist, Catholic, some dude who just wants to be a Christian today. Anybody that would profess that gets communion. Now, there's historical precedent for that in combat on the walls of Constantinople before the eventual victorious assault of Sultan Mehmed II when Constantinople fell, 1452, 1457, something like that, right?
53, yeah.
Yes, the priests were on the walls and they communed the Orthodox and the Roman Catholics alike on those walls. They would have communed the Baptists, but there was no Baptist church in the 1400s. So anyone that professed received communion because within 24 hours, there's a 50-50 chance they're not going to be around anymore. And we're not going to deny them the body and blood of Christ on their deathbed, essentially, because they don't know the Nicene Creed, or they say it differently, or have whatever. So no, when it comes to exigent circumstances like that, absolutely. And that was the direction that I was given from my bishop at Metropolitan Tikhon after he had consulted with Bishop Mark, who was the archdiocesan bishop for the Catholic Archdiocese of the military. So they both had that agreement. Yes, you will commune Catholics, and Sergeant Jimenez at Bellenby, he was a Roman Catholic, and you will commune Baptists, you will commune anyone like that. Now, that was 2008. Fast forward to 2013. There's an article in the Army Times. I think it was in the Army Times, but it's online. You can still look it up. I made a visit to the Romanian chapel in Kandahar in 2013 and did divine liturgy for them, for that Romanian infantry battalion there. And it took a lot of work to get there. It took me about 3 months of planning to make that happen because I was at the Siege of Sodef at Bagram at Camp Vance, and we needed to get all the way down to Kandahar. So me and my chaplain assistant, and we had to plan flights and whatnot because we got to go through Indian country to get there. So I finally get there. We go through all that trouble. Probably about 150 soldiers from that Romanian infantry battalion showed up to divine liturgy. It was really cool. But it went south quick when I turned around and walked out with the chalice, and only 5 of them took communion. So I was a little on the aggravated side, you might say, having planned all that much for a Romanian infantry battalion. I mean, and secondly, since when did the Romanians want an American priest? That's an Orthodox country. So, but they're short on chaplains too. So I went down there, I turned around, put the chalice back on the altar, walked back out there and gave sermon number 2. I asked them, why are you not receiving communion? And there was an interpreter there, and there's some mumbling, and they come back, well, they said that they had breakfast. I'm like, okay, heroes. Hopefully it was a good breakfast. How many of y'all going out the wire in the next 24 hours? The majority of them all raised their hand. So you're going out the wire in Kandahar, in the middle of the summer, in the middle of this fighting season, and you're not going to take communion before you go because you have breakfast? Like, okay, tell me what you have for breakfast. I just want to know. Tell me. I mean, I hope it was a 5-course meal, man. I hope it was the greatest breakfast you ever had. I had Captain Crunch, one of them said. I was like, Captain freaking Crunch, really? Hopefully it had the crunch berries in there, you know? So they said they hadn't, and I was like, I don't care. I don't care if you fasted or not. You're soldiers, you're going out the wire. So get up here and take this communion before you freaking get whacked, and then you're done. And now you got to explain to yourself or to whomever else out there why you refused Holy Communion 24 hours before you freaking died, or less than that. So I got more of them, but they're like, well, you don't understand. In Romania, you know, the grandmas, you know, I can't remember what they call it. In Greek, it's the yayas. They tell them that you can't do that. And I'm like, look, the yayas are not priests. They're not bishops. This is the I don't know, we call it the Yaya Scuttlebutt crew, the Yaya Gym Rats, whatever you want to call it. The Yaya canon lawyers. No, I love Yayas. They're great. But when they start doing this sort of a thing, they're keeping people from the chalice that need the Eucharist in combat. They couldn't figure out, and the word that you mentioned before that we'll talk about now, they could not figure out economia. So, canons, yes, you don't take communion from a heterodox faith group, right? We don't do that. If you're a soldier and you kill in battle, you abstain from the Eucharist for 3 years or 2 years. I can't remember what it is. St. Basil's Canon 13. There's canons and canons, rules. They all come out of the ecumenical councils. But the Eastern Orthodox Church exercises economia. And economia means that the bishops, who are the real canon lawyers, everybody else is just running their mouth. These bishops decide how to apply these canons. And that's economia. And they're applied differently for different circumstances, for different people at different times. The goal of the canons is virtue, not deontology, which we discussed back in episode 2. The goal is virtue, and this is applied virtuously. So, secondly, for all those canon lawyers out there and all those folks on the internet, all those influencers, all those podcasts out there talking about canon law, shut up, man. Unless you're a bishop, shut your mouth. You really have nothing to do with canon law whatsoever. It's trivia. The only person that understands and has the authority to execute canon law is a bishop, not even me. I do what my bishop tells me to do. He's the one who decides canon law. There was a story about a bishop a few years back, and he's making a decision. He's talking in front of a church, parish, community, or maybe a diocesan assembly, and someone raises their hand and says, hey, that's against the rudder, what you're going to do, Your Eminence. Now, the rudder is a big volume of all the canons. That's what the rudder is. Big book called The Rudder. It's got all the canons in there. You're violating the rudder. The bishop slammed his fist into the podium and said, I am the rudder. And he's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, according to the First Ecumenical Council, and that is the way the church has always understood that. So all of you folks out there who want to talk about your rules and your pre-communion and your whatnot, if you want to quote canon law, you're a charlatan.
Can you give another example, Father? So everyone's talking about full immersion baptisms. If you're not fully immersed,
Another example, yeah.
You are not baptized. Can you give an example from Economia there?
Sure. We can do emergency baptisms. Anybody can do an emergency baptism. I can do one. You can do one, Alex. anybody out there listening to this podcast who's an Orthodox Christian can do an emergency baptism. And no, if you can do a triple immersion, by all means do it. But what if you're out there in the desert and there's no water around? Well, you can pour a canteen over someone's head if you want to. You can even baptize someone with sand. You can take a bucket of sand and dump it over the top of them in an emergency baptism. So economia, a great example of economia is the thief on the cross. The Lord exercised economia with that man. Remember me this day in your kingdom. Surely I say to you, you'll be with me this day in paradise, right?
Right.
That's economy exercised by the Lord. And the bishops are the place of Christ. They are the vicar of Christ in Roman Catholic terms, is the local bishop. He does what the Lord tells him to do, and the rest of us say, yes, sir. And that's how we roll.
And your local parish priest may never have heard what you just said in the past 20 minutes.
Probably not. He wouldn't. Why he wouldn't? He's never been exposed to those kinds of things. So no, he wouldn't know that, and it's not his fault. So, but he would probably tell you the same thing I said about the rudder and bishops and the canons and economia. He'd probably tell you the same thing there. But he's doing what his bishop says.
Well, thank you, Father, for explaining that. I think it's really important for people to back off the legalism a little bit. If anyone knows about,
if you want to be legalistic, go be Roman Catholic. They follow all the rules.
Yeah. So I appreciate you talking about that. Hopefully, it was a learning experience for a lot of people. Well, Father, we're kind of approaching the end here. Anything else you want to bring up? So this has been an interesting podcast because we spoke specifically about becoming a chaplain, the roles and responsibilities of a chaplain, some of your specific experiences in performing your duties as a chaplain, as an Orthodox priest chaplain. And then we spoke a little bit about the differences in a war zone. I mean, if you're going to be with your buddies and you're about to go into a firefight and someone wants to bow their head and they happen to be Baptist or they happen to be a non-denominational whatever,
right?
It's okay to bow your head and to pray to God with them before. You're not going to tell them, I'll be over here while you guys are praying over there, right?
Now, be reminded, they may say something screwy in their prayer that you don't necessarily agree with theologically. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about exigent circumstances. If the chaplain shows up, wants to have a little worship service on the eve of you going out to freaking die for your country, yeah, by all means, go participate in that.
Okay, tracking. All right, Father. Well, thank you very much. It's been a very good session here. Hopefully people got a lot out of it. I know a lot of it was new to me even before. So thank you for bringing that up. Anything else you want to say before we punch out?
That's about it. For all you heroes out there, remember, you're not alone. This is War Priest signing off the net.
This is
War Priest
signing off the net. God bless you. Out.